Hi, this is Ashley Swartz. I'm here at BTV with SMG, and I'm very, very honored and privileged to have James Patten here, who's a TED Fellow and an interaction designer out of Brooklyn, our hometown. It just gave a great talk, and we learned a lot about some of the design you're working on, but I would, first of all, like to say hello. Welcome to CES.
Hello, thanks. Glad to be here.
So, James, we've been talking for a few years now about gesture control and sort of the man-machine interface really becoming tactile and the opportunity for brands to interact in a physical way. What you're doing is real with the use of objects. I would like for you to talk about how that creates a new opportunity for brands.
Well, I think that, as babies, the first way that we learn to interact with the world is through the sense of touch. And so it's kind of this channel into our brains that, it is sort of not being taken advantage of by things on the web, by mobile apps type stuff, all this kind of thing. And so I think that if we can start to use this way of interacting with technology, of this way of communicating information to in an advertising context, there's a huge opportunity there in terms of just kind of engaging with people on a more basic, more fundamental level. Because there's this this sense that when you're using a computer, when you're browsing the web, there's a different part of your brain that's engaged than when you're, say, grabbing a coffee cup on a table. That's something you don't really have to think about in quite the same way. And so if we can try to take advantage of that way that the brain works in order to give people a richer experience when they're learning about brands, I think that's a huge opportunity.
So do you feel that physical and sort of kinetic involvement or interactions rather result in more meaningful ones with human beings in general? And does that create an opportunity for brands to actually have a two-way interaction that is physical, as well as creating an opportunity to engage with their objects?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are a couple reasons. One is this is something that's new, and I think people are attracted to the novelty of it. But also because it engages again with our brains in this more fundamental way that we don't have to think as much when we're interacting with a computer or with technology in this way. And so if there's a message that a brand's trying to get across, then the person who's consuming that message can focus on the interaction. There's an opportunity for it to be playful and still get the message across. So something like I think Siftio is actually a great example of a product that's really kind of hit a bullseye in this sort of context, right? Because there's this whole platform that is a digital platform, but it's also a very tactile, very physical, very hands-on thing. It's not a touchscreen. There are these objects that you hold in your hand, and that's the key difference, I think, that's really important in terms of how can we have all the power of a digital experience but still have this aspect of tactility, of tangibility that allows us to really get engaged in a fundamentally different way.
So what's the drawing board when a brand comes to you, like when Christian Louboutin came to you and had this idea, or we started working with Barney's? Where do you start the ideation process? Where does the genesis begin, and how do you actually foster that process of creativity, given that it's so new and unique?
Well, I think that the first step is kind of what's the aesthetic goal that we want to achieve, and then sort of working back from there. We always view technology as working in service of design, never the other way around. So we don't want to do something that's cool with technology just for technology's sake. We want to think more about the experience that we're trying to create first, and then work from there. So we would start with a brand like that, just through a brainstorming session at first, and then we do a lot of, with that brand specifically, we do a lot of collaboration with the creative team at Barney's New York, thinking about, how is this, how's Louboutin going to be marketed, particularly, in the context of Barney's, and how can we celebrate that, and in a particularly Barney's way, and Barney's has an amazing creative team that we work with, so. It starts with the aesthetic and then the brainstorming, and then we work backward till finally we settle. The last thing that we decide is really what is the kinetic aspect, what is the interactive aspect, how is the technology involved.
Awesome. Thanks, James, and thanks for doing so well with all the excitement in the background. Enjoy your week in Vegas. Thank you. Thanks, guys.